All right, I have begun recording. Thank you all for attending this Maine State Library conversation. We will be recording for the benefit of the librarians unable to attend today. And after the conversation will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please use chat to post those questions and we'll get through as many of them as we can. If you have any technical difficulties, please send me a direct message through the chat function. Today, I'd like to welcome Holly Williams, Director of the Pittsfield Public Library. She's been a librarian for 25 years, with 17 and a half of those at the Pittsfield Public Library. She started as the circulation and cataloging librarian in 2005, and in 2019 became the director. She's a reader, writer, and runner. And if you'd like to learn more about her life's adventures, she has a blog at cholly.com. Chris Dorman, the Maine State Library STEM Specialist and Regional Liaison for Somerset and Piscataquis counties, will be interviewing Holly. So why don't we go ahead and give us a warm emoji welcome to Holly, or jazz hands as Chris has done.
It's applause in ASL.
Yes, absolutely.
Quiet applause. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and especially Holly for taking time out of her day to help us with this. And as everyone knows, I'm a very hard-nosed journalist, so these questions are going to come fast and furious. So the first one is, why did you think this couldn't happen at your library?
I'm actually gonna not answer that quite yet. First, hi everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy to talk to you. Maybe not under these circumstances, but I'm still really happy to be here. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the library. So Pittsfield Public Library, we're our Carnegie Library, and that's our lovely building. We actually expanded, as you can see, in 2010, so it's double the size now, and you can't see the addition. There's an addition on the back. Built in 1904. Pittsfield has around 4,000 people. It's actually gone down a little bit to about 3,900. But it's a lovely community. We have a Rennie's, which is really freaking awesome. Although now they're moving out of Main Street, which makes me really sad. But it's a lovely community, and it was actually one of the libraries that I went to as a kid, although I didn't like it. It was very scary, not the most welcoming place. So hopefully we made that a bit better now. So I'm also gonna answer a different question, Chris, that you haven't asked yet. So how I felt about the news of possible budget cuts to the library. So this was at our regular budget meeting, and town councilor had suggested cutting our Saturday hours, which would cut our part-time staff down, cut them 20% of their hours. And I first was absolutely shocked that it was actually suggested. I suppose I shouldn't have been, but I was, and I was angry. And then after the meeting was over, like they wanted me to bring some statistics for them. I got into my car and I just started to sob. I felt like I was going to disappoint my community. And it scared me. I thought that was like the worst thing that could possibly happen within my career, to be honest. So that was the first thing that I did. And then I called my former director, Lynn Smith, a lot of you might know her, and asked if that ever happened to her before, and just tried to find some more information. And it had never happened before. So why do I think it couldn't happen at the library? Part of it is that we have a bare bones budget as it is. Our budget had increased in 2010 because of the expansion of the building, but that was like an agreement between the town and the library that they would still support that. They would, much higher electric bill and heating, and they would still do all of that. But there was never an increase in staff, certainly never an increase in materials budget, anything like that. So I thought, well, this isn't going to happen because what's there to cut? Oh, silly me. They thought that there was something to cut. So that's why I didn't think it could happen here. We can't hear you, Chris.
Because I muted. You'd think after how many years I would remember to unmute. Oh no. So after you got this news, how did you handle it? What was your next steps? Like after hearing something like that and being so affected, like what'd you think? Like what were your next steps?
So, and when we talked about doing this, I had to go back and like look at some of my emails, and then I had to like write down what happened when, because it was all kind of a blur at that point. So the next day, I remember when I got home, and I was telling my husband about it and crying again. Like, I'm like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. So then, but the next day I'm like, all right, let's go. So I emailed the trustees and I let them know what happened. I gave them like my recollection of everything that happened at the meeting. It was recorded anyway, so they could go and look at it. And then I made a list of people that I thought I probably should contact. I had a discussion. I was actually working at the desk that next day, and I had a discussion with a patron, just a very loyal patron, but she's an activist for a variety of issues. And I told her what had happened, and we just got to talking about who to talk to. And so I sent her an email similar to what I sent the trustees, kind of going over everything that I had experienced. So then the day after that, so then I'm like, I gotta work. So I'm working, I'm running the desk that day. So the day after that, I formed my email and I emailed 40 different people. So the trustees had already been notified. So I emailed everyone else from the friends group, because some of the trustees are in the friends group. And if you
that
work
you have access to
really
it past the
small
library officers.
library, someone needs to mute, by the way. So I emailed 40 people. So some were from the friends group, some were just some really loyal patrons that we had, even people in our book group. One moment, please. Okay. So some people in our book group I had emailed in, as well as Saturday users that I knew always came in on Saturdays. And some of them were people that I didn't really know very well, and I didn't know how supportive that they would be, but it would directly affect them for sure, because that's the only day they ever come into the library. So I made sure that I emailed them too. And so then I sent the email out, and then I actually called the Bangor Daily News and just left a message saying, just so you know, this is what's happening. Then I also Facebook messaged Channel 5, WABI. And part of the reason why I did that is that we had a reporter who lived here in town. And apparently he had already left, but it still helped. They did come at one point. And then I contacted Jenny Melvin from the State Library. And I'm like, so Jenny, I don't know what to do. I felt very, very overwhelmed. I knew that she could help. And I had to bring some statistics that I already knew how to get, but then she helped me bring even more information, maybe more than they wanted, but that didn't matter. They needed to know what the library was really all about. So then after that, so hold on, what else do I have on here? And so then I had like 2 weeks to get my stuff together for the next meeting. So within that time, just about every person that came in the library, if I hadn't emailed them, and if I was anywhere near out front, which I tended to be more at that time, I told every patron that came in what was happening. And I suggested, I just said, if you're not happy about this, which is what I said in the email, if you're not happy about it, I think you might want to contact your town counselor. And here is a list of your counselors in case you don't know who they are. And then we made this map So this is, it's the town of Pittsfield. It's the town map. And then we let people know what region that they lived in, because they didn't know who their representatives were. They didn't know who their reps were. They didn't know what region they were in. It never really mattered to them. And this time it did, which it was kind of cool. It's like almost like we were teaching a civics lesson to people, you know, that it was pretty great. So lots of people emailed the counselors, and many of them also sent me copies of the emails, which was pretty great. And some just let me know if they did. They got phone calls. They also got physical letters. It was awesome. And then, so a week after that meeting, I also put something out to the public library directors listserv, just asking for help. I had some specific questions that they had asked about maybe turning the library into a nonprofit and not a town department anymore. And so lots of folks gave me some great feedback. And it was also just nice to know that I had this community out there that could help me. And then, so all of that took place on the original meeting was October 18th. So within there, by the way, I also went to NELA for a couple of days, and I can't tell you a whole lot of if I learned stuff at NELA that time, because I was very overwhelmed, and I was like fielding phone calls and emails, but I did my best anyway. And so the November 1st was the next town council meeting. And what's funny is that I had emailed 40 people, and not all of them came to the meeting, but 40 people did show up to that meeting to support us. I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. So, okay, that was a long way to answer that question. So sorry about that.
I mean, it's okay, because I feel like I don't really need to ask you the next one because you already answered it.
About who I chose?
You chose. I'm like, well, she's already answering that one, so that's fine.
Oh, well, one person I didn't mention. So I also, within the email, emailed our local house representative. And she's actually a user of the library, and so is her son. And her kid is awesome. Like, he is like one of my favorite people that come in here. And so I make sure that I let her know, and she was at the meeting, and that was also fairly powerful. She had a lot to say, and she okay, it's being recorded, so I gotta be careful. So she appealed to some people that might not want to support us. So it was really great. That was really great. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Oh, and a former town councilor. She was no longer on the council, and I had sent her the email too. And she was also running for council again. So she made sure that she was there. So yeah, we had some pretty awesome people there. So yeah.
So I guess what I'm understanding is basically, you know, everyone, and you filled out all of the big guns. Okay.
Well, but I think I think probably all of you do too, you know, or I mean, especially I worked here a really long time. So some of the people you might not think to ask, especially if you're new at your library. If you've been here for a long time, you will, or your staff will know. Like, my staff did give some suggestions of some people. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that person. So let's talk to them when they come in. And so, yeah.
Now, you mentioned the maps, which is phenomenal, by the way, because I have to look up every voting day, which ward I'm in. What were the conversations you had? Like, you mentioned the people you contacted. Were there different conversations with different people, or was it just one elevator speech?
No, it really was different, partly because I'm not good at the elevator speech thing. I really wish that I was, and I tend to just babble, as you can see. But I kind of do it from the heart. That probably sounds very touchy-feely, but that's kind of who I am anyway. This community, okay, I am going to get a little teary for the likely, but any of you that know me know that that's going to happen anyway. So I care about this place. I really care about this community. And this, I really think for some people would truly harm them. And so the people that came into the library, I made sure that they knew, first of all, they all know that we care about them and we care what happens to them, but they needed to take action now. The town council couldn't just hear this from me. They had to hear it from other people. So every person that came in, most of them I know well. And so I would say, hey, just so you know, this is what happened. And a lot of people, I didn't have to say anything else. They would just run with it. And some people want a little more information, like, well, it must be hard to have like a town budget. Absolutely. And where to find some cuts. Yes, absolutely. But is this the place to do that? So I had some really great back and forth with some people, but I only had one person who he supported the library, but he thought, well, maybe this is where we have to cut. But his wife wrote a supportive letter. So I thought that was interesting, but anyway. So yeah, it was some of the basic stuff, like, this is what's happening. If you can contact your people, if you want to, because you care about the library or support the library, then go for it. So.
I was at the meeting, just full disclosure, and it was amazing. People kept coming in, and it was standing room only, and people just kept talking about not only how amazing Holly is, but how important the library is to the community. And so that kind of leads in to the next question. What do you wish you had known before all of this had happened?
This was a really tough one. This is a tough question. So Jared and Chris and I had a meeting a while ago kind of about this, just talking about it. And this question, I was like stumped. I'm like, I have no idea. But the more I thought about it, first, the more I think it's just, I wish someone had said, this really can happen to you. Like, no matter how safe you feel, it really can happen. So I wish that maybe someone had said that to me, and I completely ignored them. So I am telling you now, it can happen to you, no matter how supportive your community is. But the other thing is to always be advocating for your library. And it can just be in those conversations, even at the grocery store. I'm sure some of you too, like if you shop in the town where you work, or maybe you live there too. I don't live here, but I shop here, and people will talk to me about the library in the grocery store or hand me their books. That happens all the time too. But keep advocating for the library, talk to people about it, but also kind of like keep track of, of who people will support you. I use the term, gather your troops. I definitely even said at one point, I am building my army. And I hated to say that, partly because I'm not a very violent person. Not very violent. Okay, I'm not a violent person. But I felt like I was in a battle, and I was. And so if gather your troops feels good, or just to gather your people, your community, do that too. And I actually have like a little list of people now about possible book challenges or book banning. I've actually had people come to me to say, hey, if anything happens, I want to help. So now I have a nice little list going for that, in case, or probably when that happens.
I mean, my biggest thing is now I just want to see an army of librarians, because I feel like that could be a terrifying thing. Like, we're quiet, but when we start going, ooh. And we've covered most of the major questions. We've talked about, how did you react to the news? We talked about your next steps. How do you get your community to rally your patrons and your community? The advice that you could give other libraries, and maybe give us a little hint and intro into what happened after the meeting. Like, what were the results, Holly?
Sure. So at that meeting where 40 people showed up, and some said some really incredible things about the library and how it affects their lives. One of the counselors actually proposed to, well, maybe we should increase your budget. And I was truly speechless. And I'm like throwing out a number because I'm like, well, I don't know, give me $6,000. I don't know. And so they're like, well, how about you come back, in 2 weeks, do some research, and then give us a number. And so I put out surveys at that point. We did a bunch of online and paper surveys asking folks. And it was obvious that a lot of people wanted our Saturday hours to actually increase. We were only open 3 hours. So we asked to be open an additional 3, so a 6-hour day on Saturday. That would actually increase our part-time staff. So they went from 15 to 18 hours instead. And so I asked for that. And then I asked just for an additional 11% on the book budget. So our book budget materials budget had been the same for over 25 years, actually probably 30. And when the council heard that, they're like, well, the new counselors, I should say, when the new counselors heard that, they're like, seriously, it hasn't been? And I'm like, no, it's never been. And I said, and honestly, we don't ask. And, and I made sure that I told them too, because there are a lot of new counselors, because there are lots of new people on different boards. And I said, we never asked for more because we were told never to ask for more. And you do with what you have, period. And that was eye-opening for them. They actually didn't know that that's what happened. So they did increase our book budget by the 11% I asked for, and they gave our part-time staff the extra hours that they also get to continue throughout the summer. So in the summer, we are closed on Saturdays, but now my part-time staff have extra people. We have talked about maybe doing an evening, but we haven't figured that out yet. So they gave me everything that I wanted, which was pretty awesome. And so which you may ask this later, but I'm just going to throw it out there. So we wanted to celebrate. And so our budget year is January to December. And so we had a holiday open house, and we advertised it as, we want to celebrate you and the community that we live in. So we hope that you come. And we had live music that our friends group paid for. And they also paid for a bunch of food. One of the former town councilors actually she has a cheese shop. So she brought like a big, huge plate of cheese and crackers. And then we had a bunch of giveaways, like people could, can't remember what they call that. It's kind of like a silent auction. So they bought like tickets for 50 cents that would go to the friends, and then they put in jars, that kind of thing. So we gave away all that stuff at the end of the party. And so we had a party, and it was great. It was so much fun.
It's like she has the questions in front of her.
Well, it was just a nice segue.
It was a fantastic segue, because as much as she's like, I hate talking in front of people, Holly, because you care for your community, and it definitely shows the impact that you have. Like, you're supposed to get a little worked up and a little upset, because as librarians, we all feel that for our communities and our libraries. We've kind of gone through all of the questions, other than we could go back to I don't know if you actually did why do you think this couldn't happen to your library? But I think we answered that in the beginning.
Yeah, because I said we have a bare bones budget. Why would they ever cut us?
Yeah, like, we don't ask for anything. We just sit in our little hole and try to help our community. We do have a couple questions in the chat. Jay Campbell asked, for municipal libraries, it seems as though public advocacy for the library's budget can be a bit dicey, especially if it conflicts with library directors' positions or superiors. How do you navigate rallying the town against the people who are ultimately your bosses?
Yeah, that's fun, huh? So first of all, my boss is actually the town manager, but her bosses are the town council. and there's something I don't feel comfortable saying on a recording. So, but I will say it in April at another talk that I'm doing at the state library, just saying. Okay. So, it was very uncomfortable. And actually the email that I sent out to the 40 people, the town council requested a copy of the email once they heard that I had emailed people. And I, of course, and I mean, I would do it anyway. I sent that to them. I didn't say anything that was not true. And I just asked for some assistance. And actually, I didn't really ask for assistance. I said, if you feel so inclined, feel free to email people. So it was uncomfortable, but it also felt like so right. And the people that I emailed had no idea, because you know what? No one goes to the town council meetings. No one watches the recordings, and they don't until someone says, oh, by the way, this is what's happening in town. You might want to know a little something about it. So I felt like, well, that's my job. My job is to advocate for this place and to let the community know this is happening. And if you want this to happen, then don't say a word. But if you want things to change, then you've got to speak up. It can't just be me.
I mean, your community supports you. So I think that's very, very important.
I would just, jump in, if you don't mind, I would also note that Jay wanted to know if you felt it was a conflict of interest.
How would it be a conflict? I guess I don't understand.
Maybe we have Jay.
Yeah, Jay, talk.
Sure. Thanks. That was a wonderful answer. I'm just wondering if it's a conflict of interest during work time as a town employee to be advocating against the municipal officers for the town.
I didn't feel like I was advocating against them. They actually had asked me for some information to bring to them, more about how people use the library and that kind of thing. And I did that, but I felt also like they're not going to get all the information that they really need. They just don't know that they need it. So I know, honestly, Jay, I didn't feel that at all.
That's great. Thank you. And the way that you said that you phrased your email made a lot of sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have a couple more questions. Barb, I see yours, but I feel it's going to open up a big discussion. So we'll come back, I promise. I don't know who's on the Acton Public Library Zoom, but Acton Public Library asked, why are you closed on Saturdays in the summer? Because they actually add Saturdays in July and August.
So that's such a good question. And that's something that we've actually been talking about. It's traditionally, this is how we've always done things, you know, that kind of thing. So there's that. Also, okay, I used to work at the Blue Hill Library over 20 years ago. And I mean, summertime, nuts out, so busy. Here in the summertime, not so much. The days that it's busy are when we have like children's programs, but that's about it. And I honestly feel it's like this. I know there are a lot of libraries closed on Saturdays in Maine. And I think part of it is, how about we let our staff enjoy this incredible state we have, and we have such a short amount of time where it's beautiful. So, and we're only closed in July and August. We are open all of June on Saturdays too. But we have open for special occasions on Saturdays in the summer. We used to have the Egg Festival here in town. That was a big thing. Yeah, well, it doesn't exist anymore. Sorry, Chris. COVID kind of shut that down and they've never restarted it. But we were open on Saturdays. I actually started that the year before I became director. I asked the director to do that. So we were open then, and then we were open for, we tried to be open for the local high school. It's a private school. It's MCI, Maine Central Institute, and they have a big alumni reunion in August every year. And so we did open one year for them on a Saturday, and it was silly because no one came in. on the day, because they have events that day. So the day before and that Friday before, it was just packed, and we ended up, you know, being open like a little later for that instead. So that's why. Maybe not a great answer, but it's what I got.
I think that makes sense. I've been in Pittsfield on a Saturday, and you usually just stop at Rennie's to get sunscreen and a new lawn chair, and then you just continue on to a lake. Nothing against Pittsfield. Mary Lou asked, for the last 5 years, we've stayed at flat funding because it was heavily suggested to us. This year we had no choice but to have an increase because we added a full-time position. Yay. I'm not sure if holding the line each year is the best way. Small increases does not seem to hurt as much. Now we are up against an ambulance service, new roads, bridges, and when I presented our budget last week, there were no questions. She's not sure if that's good or bad, but we get 39% of our budget from the town.
Huh. That's like a bunch of questions in there, actually. So you only get 39% from the town. So if there are a lot of increases, does that mean you have someone else to ask then, Mary Lou?
No, we have to fundraise. We do a ton of fundraising. We have a book sale open all the time. We do have an endowment, but it's one of those things. I think looking back, I wonder if we did the right thing by just saying, okay, yeah, we'll just take what you give us. And we really try to hover around that 40%. And we try to come up with the rest and try to, you know, our annual fund drive, I forgot about that one. So like this year, we even bumped up that. So trying to even raise on the revenue side, our asks for our annual fund and trying to get our book sale up a little bit. There's a whole new group on so I went in front of budget board and selectmen. And so I, you know, kind of presented why we needed the increase, which was, I think it's like a 2% increase. Anyway, it's not very much. But, you know, no one had anything to say. And I'm like, come on, you know, you're all new people. Do you guys understand? Plus, I have to say, a lot of those folks have never stepped foot in here. And that's the thing that I think really upsets me is like, you know, if you go ahead and vote us, hopefully they will, you know, be supportive. But a lot of times they, you know, oh, you're doing a great job. And that's about all I hear. But I never see them in here. So,
yeah. And I mean, that's what the few people, the couple of counselors who initially said, you know, how about we cut Saturdays? They hadn't been in the library since they were 10, you know, and they're like in their 30s and 40s.
yeah.
So, but what happens now with your budget? Like, so now, have they actually voted? Do you have more people more departments that have to go through? What happens now?
Yeah, so we're always at the end of the line. We're actually behind the cemetery committee that goes in front of them. I'm like, they're all dead. Anyway, so this week, it's the selectmen meet. Next week, the budget board meets separately, and then they come back together the week after. So no matter what happens, we do have town meeting in June. And so, you know, in the past, we've sort of relied on if you know, if there is no support, at least like what you did with all of your people, we have that time in June. But sometimes I feel like by then it's like, ugh, when they're not supporting it, sometimes the residents of the town, you know, because they don't want their taxes to go up. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I sometimes I think, you know, looking back, maybe we should have been doing little increments along the way. So they don't look at it as a huge number.
Yeah. And I mean,
Thanks.
it's good. You're welcome. But it's also good to know, like I said to the town council, that we were always told, do not increase anything. And they didn't know that that's what we had always been told. So it was good to let them know that's what's happening. Jared, can I remove the spotlight since we're all talking now? It's freaking me out. You don't all need to see my giant face here. There we go. Thank you.
So another question, Kate from Southwest says, celebrating Holly. Yay, fabulous.
Okay.
Is there something you would change about how you manage the situation or who you reached out to?
I would say no because of what happened. Because of the results. I'm like, all right. But not really. Right now I'd have to say no. I don't really think that I would. It was a scary time, I'll tell you that. I've never been that stressed here before, but I felt pretty well supported though by most of the community. So thank you, Kate.
I've lost the question. There we go. And I don't see any more other than the one from Barb. Is that correct, Jared? Somebody throws in one. Ah, yes, more Kate celebration.
Yes, you're very kind, Kate.
And I think this one is probably going to be open to the entire group. To everyone, what's the best ongoing ways to advocate for your library? So Holly rallied her Army Not Army, her community. She got the press involved. I Facebook and emailed everyone I knew in Pittsfield because I spent many a summer there. So what other options or activities or what have other libraries done to advocate for the library, for their budget, and for their staff, and for their community?
So it's time for all you to talk.
Yes. Feel free to unmute or like put your thumb up so I can call on you. That seems weird.
Michelle had something in the chat too. I think she was saying.
Oh yeah, I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Michelle.
Yes. Okay. Well, I was just saying it's an ongoing thing with us as a nonprofit to make sure that people are aware that it needs to be supported in a different way than a town department, because it's just considered a donation, and we're listed with lots and lots of much smaller donations to the Snowmobile Club and to different services. There's a bus service and different things the town contributes to, senior meal site, all that. But we are hugely, larger, much larger of a donation. So it's just a constant, as Mary Lou was saying, it's a constant thing to make sure that people will come to town meeting and support that article. And we recently asked for some money from the undesignated funds to do some building work on our building because it just needed maintenance work. And, we needed to do the same kind of things that, Holly, you did in terms of getting an email out there, having something in the library and talking to people about the need to go to the special town meeting to vote for this extra, donation specifically for building work. And people did support it. I mean, it wasn't unanimous by any means, but we did have more people vote yes than no. So, but it's just something we have to always be aware of, like Michelle Connor said, ongoing conversations. And also I try to go to select board meetings regularly and give them an update as to what's happening at the library, since we're not directly connected. The town manager isn't my boss, but I want him to know what's going on in the library and try to encourage them to be involved. They don't usually take me up on that, but and my camera doesn't work, so I apologize for not having a picture, but it's just an ongoing thing. And it was interesting to hear, Holly, though, because I tend to think that municipal departments maybe don't have to do this kind of work, but clearly they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Michelle Connors, you have your hands up?
So I would just, to jump on that, I wanted to talk for a second about the percentage and asking for money from the towns. We're at Kennebunk Free Library, a 501c3 nonprofit. We get about 75% of support from town. And we've really tried to change the perspective over the last handful of years, at least, where it's not so much like we're kind of timidly asking so much as, you know, we're an investment for this community. And the more that you can invest now, the less that you're going to have to pay out as a town in the long run, especially when it comes to requesting more capital funds for things that need addressing. We ask for those funds. We don't get them every year, but we're much more seen, and every community is going to be different. It's going to be more of a struggle in different places, but changing that kind of idea of like, no, we're not, you know, we don't want to just ask for, you know, something. Having someone to tell us, you know, like, it's okay to keep asking. I've had to get over that shyness, basically, of saying, no, I'm just going to keep asking for money. And then this way you could say, well, you didn't give us last year. Can you give us this year? So I think it's also something that we need to change a bit in how we approach it, because we want to be more proactive about that. And I think, like, some people were saying, you know, like, it might be surprising. We might find out like, hey, no, we have this money and we can give it to you. And the worst they could do is say no.
I think we have a really good one from, oh no, my thing moved. Catherine from Lewiston. What kind of data or statistics did your council want to see, Holly? Like, was there some specific ones that you highlighted, needs, interests?
They wanted to know, at first, they just wanted to know our Saturday statistics, like how many people come in. But also I made sure that they knew that, okay, we're open 3 hours. So I ended up doing like a comparison of the same 3 hours on Monday through Friday also, because there were actually some days during the week that were like the same amount that we would get on Saturday. And some actually a little less, but then it picked up the rest of the day. So I'm like, well, if we're going to, you know, if we're going to be open on Saturday, then maybe if we're open until 4 o'clock, then you're going to have a lot more people anyway. So those were the basic ones, but then we made sure that put in there about what we actually do, as far as like, we help people get their vaccinations, and of course there's tax forms, and there's a bunch of things that they don't realize that we do, or help people with unemployment all the time, and for filing for unemployment, or and of course actually applying for jobs. And so there are all these things that they were like, oh, you know, I don't just go in to get a book, and you know, that whole thing, just the usual stuff. That's all, just a little more education in that part.
Related, and I think you answered this. She also asked what was the specific area within the library budget that they were looking to cut? Was it just the Saturday hours?
Staff, yeah, that was the one thing. So they were wanting to cut staff for Saturday. I'm hoping Nancy's going to talk, because I know Nancy put her camera on, and I'd love to get her 2 cents on this.
Oh, I have so much going through my mind. Thank you, Holly. I think you were very courageous to go ahead and just do what you needed to do as a town department. I have a wonderful working relationship in my community. I'm from Scarborough, so I have nothing negative to say at this stage, but in eras I'm aware of, the issues between departments can be dicey sometimes. There can be one department against another. There may be fan clubs for certain departments that put the library in a difficult situation. Jealousy between departments fighting for the same pot of money. In a smaller community, that might be more evident. It can show up at town meetings. So I think your scenario is just a very, it's a terrific example of put your head down, take your professional responsibility seriously, and full speed ahead. If you do or don't have a supportive town manager, or maybe 1 or 2 point people on your council or select person board, it can be more difficult. You do have to have courage in this job. People think of librarians often as very passive people, and you described well, I think it was you, Chris, who said what it would look like if librarians got together and created a major force. Well, we do. From time to time, we do have to do that, whether it's book banning or some other issue in our world. But Holly, you did great, and I again, that was very courageous to go against your no, I think I want to rephrase that carefully because you didn't go against. What you did was you created information. You took the challenge of being asked to provide more information, and you did that in spades. And your information wasn't the traditional statistics. Your information came from the community. And that's why you were successful. You used your service points, all of those individuals that you reached out to. So that's why you succeeded. It wasn't about how many roads of snowplows had to be funded or how many books you had to check out. It was how you touched people in your community and supported them. So well done.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. That just means so much to me. I really appreciate that. I just want to say something on what Michelle Connors had said too about, you know, kind of trying to get over your shyness and ask. And it's hard. There's no doubt about it. It's not an easy thing to do. And I really still haven't. I mean, I sort of like put on the spot that, well, here, you want some money? Oh, okay. So just know that it's not an easy thing, and that's okay. You'll get it.
I guess one other little thing, since I was invited to speak, here you go. I do want to say that I don't think we're served well by not asking for more. I think even if you have to ask for more and don't get it, it's an opportunity to explain that our costs, I mean, that we have costs, that we have payroll costs, we have materials costs. There isn't any service in our community that is the same over the last 5 years. And if we don't take the opportunity to educate our community about the increases in our costs to serve them, they're never going to know. As you said, Holly, it was an opportunity. People had never realized your book budget hadn't gone up in how many years. We are a nonprofit here in Scarborough, so we also have to raise some private funds, but we do have to every year share what the impact has been on, whether it's inflation or because we've increased a service point or we wanted to try something new. Even if we don't get the funds, it's important for us to take that time to educate our decision makers and ultimately our community about what our costs are. So we look brave and proud and really creative if we don't come back and ask for more money, but it's ultimately not serving our community, in my opinion. So I just want to put that point out there.
So all very good points and ideas. I also wanted to highlight Barb put in a phrase that I'm now going to put on a t-shirt. Remember, library service is not free, it's prepaid. Ooh, I like that one. T-shirt incoming. I don't see, is there anybody who wants to sum up? We have about 10 minutes, 9 minutes left. Any more questions for Holly or the amazing group of people we have here in general? Thoughts, hopes? I mean, I have one question, but it's completely unrelated, so I'm going to ask after we stop recording.
All right, I assume that means that we are done with the questions. I want to thank Holly for being such a wonderful speaker and giving of her time. I think she's gone through an extraordinary experience, and we're very lucky to be able to capture that experience and share it with you all. I know that many of the people who registered today weren't able to show up for this meeting, but it will be preserved going forward. And if you have any questions for Holly, is there any preferred way that they contact you? I know we've provided your email.
Email is probably the best. I mean, you can always call 487-5880, but honestly, email is just better. Unless you really just want to chat for a little bit, and that's totally fine too, because I love that also. We'll be on the phone a lot longer, right, Debbie?
Also, I want to thank Chris Dorman for being our interviewer. She's done a great job. Like I said, she showed up at the meeting for Holly and did a great job as the regional liaison to support Holly in that. And I am going to end the recording. So if there's anything that you would like to stick around and ask post-recording, that would be fantastic. Thank you all again. If you have to leave, we appreciate your time and have a great day.